other video just got cut off suddenly. The phone died. I'm gonna very shortly resume what I was saying, where I was in the middle of that whole thing. But in the meantime, something else has come to mind too, which I'd like to bring up. Kind of important. I'm coming to this particular quote here from the Bible, which is the source of the moral standard for the, for the particular way we live and operate here. Titus 2 says it, and I think I've quoted this already in other videos, but I'd like to apply it a little more, just in reminder. What's the correct standard? That's the standard by which someone's judged. How far you strayed from the thing you were supposed to do instead. That's the correct thing. Now, Titus 2 says, the older women likewise, what's the command from God? That they be in behavior as becometh holiness. Not false accusers. Now remember when my mother came out in those texts from January, from December and January and February, and one of those around that time frame, winter time, and falsely accused me of falsely accusing her? Where she said something I said was a lie, and then both me and you, Anthony, go to ask her. I asked her directly, she gave me no answer. You apparently asked her the same thing, you didn't tell me you got an answer. So, very funny, right? 5 months no answer, when we wondered to ask her, why don't you substantiate this? What did I say falsely? Which part? Which video? Which sentence? What statement did I say? Nothing. Empty air, crickets, silence. But Titus 2 prevents any older woman from being allowed to even accuse falsely. It's a bad sin. Double sin, you see. Now, not given to much wine, that's one thing my mom never had a problem with. But teachers of good things, she missed the mark a little bit on that. At least in the fact that she ended up being a hypocrite, it seems, That they may teach the young women. Do you see why it says that? Do you see why it says, here's the instructions for older women, and the things they're supposed to do includes teach the younger women? Why doesn't it say teach the younger men too? And there exactly you fucking go. That's the whole damn point. Everything I've been saying is reinforcing exactly the underlying crux of the matter. You don't have authority, Mom, to instruct, demand, coerce, and order a man. You can't do it. It's out of your power morally. You're not permitted to instruct by the Bible. You're only permitted to teach. Do you see the difference? Instruct means to give the order and to command. To teach means to inform them about what's right and wrong without going so far as to tell anyone what the fuck to do. Or to hold anyone to account or strict liability as a result of a failure to do something. See the wisdom there? Time for you people to fucking learn something, They're supposed to merely love their husbands, and what else? Love their children. But what's the definition of love, class? It doesn't mean like. Love doesn't mean, it's not just a strong form of the word like. I like you, or I like you a lot, so that's like I love you. No. Morons who think that. To love someone means to accept them as they are. So can you both accept someone the way they are and resist someone in the way they're being? Are both of those possible? No, they're not possible. That's why the Bible instructs, when you have a dilemma between those two and you are a woman, the correct one is B. Only grace, only bow, you become water. The other one will be iron. Dumbasses. Not you guys or whoever I'm talking to anyway, wherever this will end up. But it's understood, damn it, what I'm saying. Hell. And all this At the end, so that the word of God is not blasphemed or disrespected. Because it's God himself who puts this order, in that this is the substantive matrix programming of the universe. You defy it, it's going to hurt you through the prompts of the matrix as it naturally manifests bad karma, curses, and other negative things back towards you. See, very important to understand this. In addition, the particular article that I found this quote within, there's all these quotes regarding Bible principles that regulate mothers and motherly principles and how mothers are supposed to be. In addition to each quote, they analyze the context, the meaning of each one. So what are these people who are obviously at the level of providing reasonable or fair analyses for these quotes? Presumably they're people who are intelligent and at least mildly authoritative on the matter. Reasonably, they continue on and say, as I show here, these verses show that the same way a mother will take care of her child is the way that God will take care of you. Ah. Wow. So if the mother isn't satisfying the accord with her own children, such that they are content and treated in such a way that dignifies both the parent and the child, that if the parent ever allows by her conduct and choices and her course of treatment towards those children for those children to become angry, such that eventually there's a blow up and a mess up and a disconnection and a disreconciliation, that means it's your fault, the parent, and therefore God will withdraw the support from you? Ah, of course. And therefore, we understand why the New Testament quotes and further elaborates on how the obligation is for parents to never allow your children to become angered to the point of wrath. That's the substantive commandment that comes sewn in to the commandment of form, where they say, well, honor your mother and your father. There's a dual commandment. Unwritten attached to that is, and parents, don't do anything that would put you in a position to be dishonored or to have you become dishonorable. Oh, that's what the New Testament sages essentially clarified? Wow, they made a religion out of that? Amazing. Look at that. Wow, what happened, everybody? Forgot your principles, huh? And scrolling down to another one. This one's very important, and I don't believe I covered this one in a previous video, so this is very important to cover. From Isaiah chapter 49. It's important to bring up this particular point. You see, the reason that the Bible isn't half completely filled with instructions to parents on how to parent their children is because back then, you see, 2,000 to 5,000 years ago, the chemicals weren't in their water the way ours are now. And the other many problems that we have today that didn't exist then, when humanity back then retained a 10 times order of magnitude closer holding to the proper human instinct that no one today even recognizes anymore or operates under, unless you take all the phenibut. No joke. They didn't have to instruct parents how to be parents back then. That's like instructing fire to be hot and water to be wet. It was so natural. I'll tell you how natural it was. See, half the Bible had to be filled with, you better not steal, and you better not kill, and you better not, and don't lie. Because those were the tendency problems. Everybody back then was very susceptible to easily fall into those tendencies, because human nature was only a short twist away from that. But guess what? What was still even then unimaginable to people back then, God, they would faint if they had a crystal ball and could see what the future ends up looking like today. All the Barbara Winslows in the world running around, how they're acting towards their own kids and other parents too. There's a class of them, sadly, and it's a small class still, yet many, again, orders of magnitudes of times bigger in representation today than it was back then. And the Old Testament writers really represented this very accurately when they said, upon finding themselves having an opportunity to comment on the nature of parents, mothers, and children, did they say something like, and as for those mothers, sometimes it's not good when they screw up. We got to really tell them how to be. No. It was such an extremely rare phenomenon for the yin gender to not be yin that their commentary represented this form, which you see on your screen right now. They literally get to the subject matter, and in addressing it, they say very tellingly, as for women and mothers, can a woman even forget her nursing child? The one who she gave birth to and nursed up, that's her son or daughter, and have no compassion for, is it the son or daughter of her womb, or is it the son specifically? That's right. Because everybody knows under proper programming, when you're a normal mother, even if you have like a hawkish tendency towards any of your kids, it will always be your own daughters, but you never do that to your sons because they're just higher. They're like God too. You can't touch them. So only is the pure grace and unconditional love can be ever evoked. In a normal, if your brain works normally and your heart works normally. They don't punish it going, listen, these women are a problem, we got to stop this. No, they're like, the sky is blue, grass is green, and what that woman on earth would act like she forgets or turns away from or rejects her own son. They're like, that's almost unheard of. That's how ridiculous it is. That's how against God such a thing would be. So we can't even conceive of that. That's how anti-nature that is. And yet, for the exceedingly rare occasion they comment for, they say, yet is possible even those may forget in those exceedingly rare circumstances, yet I will not forget you. Let that offer some perspective to you, how far we've strayed. And in another chapter of the same book of Isaiah, they say the same. They're not talking about how problematic mothers can be. It's so mind-blowing. That's like saying God's the devil. That's how opposite it is to try to conjoin those two. That a mother is forgetting her son and turning away and rejecting and yelling, ordering, calling police on them. Guards, come get my son. Caesar, come attack my own family, my own son that is issued from me. Let me divide against my own family and be ripped apart so that we could all die karmically. Fuck that. Are you people retarded? There's way too much of that on this earth. But it's all because of your own mind sicknesses. It's sick. Idiots who don't know how to bow are the ones who suffer the karmic pain. That's very obvious from the beginning. Isaiah said, as obvious as it is that a mother comforts and only comforts her child, so will I comfort you. Do you understand? A mother's role is not to do anything other than to comfort. So if I'm brought to the point of screaming at my mom over the phone, what's the mark, guys? The correct mark to strive for morally. What's yin supposed to do when yang is displeased? Huh? Does anyone have a mind not thick enough to let it soak and have the enlightenment occur? As a mother comforts her child is how God shall comfort you. He uses a description of what a mother would ordinarily always be to describe himself. That's how sure he is. that mothers are good, at least they're supposed to be. And in fact, it's funny because in the later New Testament books, they say, right there in the last book of Revelations, they say, in the end days, one of the signs is that all of a sudden, the most fundamental things that involve everything possible, the most fundamental binary things will all start to become inverted. And that is how you will know that the age will be coming to an end. That this religion is supposed to cover, basically. A lot of people say that, you know, people who are deeper into the esoteric and astrological and all that, they say, you know, every age has its religion. Who knows what will happen now? I think we need a new Bible because things are so different now than they've ever been before. Is that we need the same substance of God to become represented in a new form, because it's almost like, you know, the old form, unless someone's pressing your face to it to get you to get it, it's not sticking anymore. We need some new words to get it through to you people on earth here. It's not pleasing. And amazingly, Corinthians in the New Testament proceeds on to even define love. Love is patient. Love is kind. Oh. So is love calling the police to get them to barge into your son's apartment? Or is love patient? When one son is yelling at them, brought to anger reasonably because of the inconsideration of that mother, which is a huge no-no, huge sin against God to cross your own son, grown man's son's dignity like that. That's like spitting on your father. Like spitting on your son in that way is substantively the same thing. It's 9/10 of the way as bad as if you were to spit to your father, if you're a woman. You are an idiot. God hates both things. Virtually equally abhorrent and disgusting to him are either of those. But he reminds you here, through the ones that speak, love is patient, love is kind. Is it kind to hang up the phone and then treat me like I'm a thing, like some kind of variable to be controlled the way a rabid dog in the street who is barking needs to have animal control called on them? They need to be handled like an animal and subdued and basically herded like fucking sheep? Is how you treat the human dignity of your own family? You are idiots, those of you in this world who do this. Shame. Love does not, skipping ahead slightly, love does not act improperly. Is not selfish. So it doesn't concern itself with what you think is the good idea about for how to look at after your own interests. No, love is the abandonment of your own interests. Love is not provoked. So we're one in her foolish position, in her naivete, in the disorder and the sickness that all of this came from, to stand there in the sick justification of it, or the attempted justification. There is no legitimate justification formed here, to be sure. Or to say, well, it was a very provoking experience, so when someone yells, I will do what I must do. You act like a man, right? That's what you do, you foolish idiots. The woman will act like the man, and I will enforce law and order, right? God shits on you, you idiots, when you do this. Twisting nature. Twisting how he made it. Disgusting. And love does not keep a record of wrongs. Get it? Ultimate grace means ultimate graciousness, means ultimate giving, free giving, always bowing and giving even more than you have, and loving it, and not resenting that, and only wishing that you really had more to give, because that's the self-regenerative aspect that causes more to become generated. Only people with this narcissistic cluster B personality mind sickness are the ones who feel like there's a lack of love to give. But we all know in this world, those of us who act and think properly, love is the only thing that is not finite. when you distribute it, you always have more. You decide to generate it. You decide to cultivate it. When you don't have enough of it to give, it's your fault. You and only you are the one responsible for giving it when you owe it to your children and anyone else in this world. Love finds no joy in unrighteousness. So when unrighteousness manifests as a disgusting course of conduct and treatment of your own son and conduct towards your son, love doesn't find joy in that, but Barbara does. Barbara holds to that, huh? It bears all things, love does. It bears them. Doesn't resist them. Doesn't fight against them. It bears all things, even the hardest things. It gladly will accept and carry willingly. Yes, that's fine. Yes, that's fine. I'll carry that too. Happily, yes. Get it? That's what to bear means. For those of you who don't speak English as your first language. Believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. There are no lines drawn, morons. Otherwise it's not love, is it? God says so. Look, it's the Bible. Now bow. Alright, now coming back around now to the earlier topic which I was discussing. If I recall from my memory, I was discussing, the police were at my apartment. My presumably apparently drunken dad just, something happened, I think, with his mind or perception or something, because that never happened before. And then here's the real kicker. Instead of my mom being on my side, this is the truest snake-like underlying person that comes out in a situation like this. They see a situation, and then they try to use it to their advantage, whatever they feel advantage is in their mind. When your perception is broken, you will try to make things go to a goal that actually is the wrong goal. The direction you're pushing a thing to try to force it with your broken woman mind instead of God mind, man mind, you will always make it go the opposite than where the man wants it to go. But you're not allowed to touch it. That's why God said, you never step in the way of man operation. And if man does something that you don't like, too bad. As far as you're concerned, that is God's will over you. You be quiet and accept that this is what's happening now. That's correct. But when I entrust my own mom, merely weeks after she brings down her boyfriend to come and fucking call me names and call me gay, I'll tell you what, if somebody was in my position, even if they actually were,
everything from birth until death is a moral test, and a test of no other kind. You're not here to be brought into a game of how to increase your personal wealth or your sense of success in the materialistic sense. You're not here to increase the level of power that you have just for the sake of power. You're not here to achieve any superficial kind of gratification in that way that's solely restricted to that and for no other higher purpose in an interlocking kind of manner. And you're not here to impose your idea of what's best onto others. With a caveat, of course. I've always told people, more recently specifically, have told people, there's only one thing that you can control in this life. And therefore, that is the measure by which the success of our lives is determined. It is how well you treat other people. Full stop. Period. End of sentence. There's nothing more. Anytime you fall for the illusion that there's something else I'm supposed to be prioritizing here, it's not. How you treat other people means what? Dignity.
Well, it's Cosmo Brown. Cosmo is Don Lockwood's best friend. He plays the piano on the set for Don and Lena to get them into those romantic moods. Oh, folks, this is it. This is it. Those romantic lovers of the screen, Don Lockwood and Lena Lamont. Ladies and gentlemen, when you look at this gorgeous couple, it's no wonder they're a household name all over the world, like bacon and eggs. Lockwood and Lamont. Now, you can tell me confidentially. Are these rumors true that wedding bells are soon to ring for you and Lena?
Well, Lena and I have no statement to make at the present time. We're just good friends.
You've come a long way together, Don. Won't you tell us how it all happened?
Well, Lena and I have made a number of pictures together.
Oh, no, Don. I want your story from the beginning.
Well, Dora, not in front of all these people.
Of your success is an inspiration to young people all over the world. Please.
Well, to begin with, any story of my career would have to include my lifelong friend, Cosmo Brown. We were kids together, grew up together, worked together.
Yes?
Well, Dora, I've had one motto which I've always lived by. Dignity. Always dignity. This was instilled in me by Mom and Dad from the very beginning.
It is my contention that morality and dignity are two things that perfectly correspond. I may have more on that on another occasion to elaborate on that, I think. But for now, the most important thing is this. Anthony, as far as our recent conversation has been concerned, one thing that you brought up to me, Anthony, about your findings and observations is that after experiencing and witnessing everything I've had to say, and after everything that you've witnessed and heard from my own mother over the last several months, you told me on the phone recently, you said, John, it's as if each of you are experiencing two completely different worlds. It's like you're in two different worlds. That's how giantly radical the separation is. This was something that came forth from you naturally as you spoke with me over the phone. I then asked you to give me your most fundamental and best example of what it was that you have found encapsulates some of these biggest differences. And you told me, you said, well, John, on the one hand, I have the understanding that you have left with me regarding everything that happened on that Sunday, October 9th of this past year, ranging from the contextual circumstances going into that day, about how you, John, and your mother haven't been talking for several days prior already because of other pre issues that only ended up getting much bigger issues piled on top of that very recklessly and carelessly. As well as the events of the day themselves. Every detail was shared as far as I can bring it into resolution has been shared. Anthony, you said, I have that side. And then, from your mother, and I say yes, and what does she say? And you, Anthony, tell me from your mother, she simply says, oh, John told me that I get to use the key when it's an emergency. And because I can use it when it's emergency, that was an emergency. So, everything's fine. I didn't do anything wrong. Nothing wrong. That, John, is how your mother essentially represents her position when she speaks to me. I don't know if it's speaking or texting, but whatever it was. And I consider this and I say, yeah, that is a huge difference. Anthony, we then further discussed on the phone how the case presumptively looks like as it sits before us. Where we got all the information we could from my end. You got some information, but it seems that you didn't get nearly as much from my mom's side. Well, that's no surprise. The defendant on trial isn't going to be running to give you all the information. Because if someone's guilty, the instinct is to hide and downplay. So you will see two different instincts arise from the two people that are here in this matter. But Anthony, you and I turned our conversation to then figure and bring ourselves to an understanding of what reasonably constitutes an emergency situation. Okay? Obviously, if you have two normal, reasonable, sane human beings who are Americans and operate as American citizens under the law, where we're sovereigns and we understand what it is to be sovereign with the sovereign mentality, we're not subjects, we're not Slavs. There's a difference. We're not animals, we're not sheep. There's a difference. If I were to grant a key to any other person in this world, and I assume they're a normal human being, I would safely be able to rely on my representation and my wording and say, this is only for use in emergency situations. We could faithfully take it that the other person, if they're normal, structured brain, they would reasonably understand exactly what that means and what that doesn't mean. Faithfully, I could tell you that in at least 98 out of 100 circumstances, if I were to lend a key to a person who on the face of the situation is already established as trustworthy on the situation, we have many reasons already in the history to that suggest that my mother is not a trustworthy person, but a heavily betraying and right infringing instinct type of person. Very not good. But anyway. Because there's a common sense fundamental understanding that's imbued in the mind of the person who is sitting there receiving the words when you say this is for use only for emergencies. Whose key are you being granted? Well, yours, sir. That's right. So obviously it goes without saying, reasonably so, that if I grant you this key, rule number one is the substantive rule that underlies all other rules that are rules of form.
the substantive underlying rule that in spirit rules them all, like the master ring that's above all the other rings in Lord of the Rings, is you don't use the key in a manner that is opposite of my will. And that's the sovereign law above all other laws. But I don't even have to say that, because when I live in a normal society where I firmly understand that most other people have enough brain to get it, I don't have to even spend the fucking energy to go through that, because that would be an insult to the person that I'm speaking to. If I had to go and elaborate all this, they would say, yeah, dude, duh, obviously. They'd roll their eyes and say, come on, I know. But when you deal with a snake will always try to twist reality to conform to what they want to paint the picture about. That's the exact opposite instinct than the correct one of the real true judge. By the way, Israel prevented in ancient Israel and many other cultures around the world for many thousands of years, a woman could not be a judge. It was not permitted. Why do you think that is? Not just sexism for the sake of sexism, genderism, whatever you call it. No. It should be obvious enough why by now. Who is able to seek reality correctly and who isn't. It's a disease and half of you on earth have it. You can't seem to figure it out. You'd swear it's not possible. All men fucking see how dumb all women are. Perhaps the smartest of us even more so. It's just that much more clear. Regardless, Anthony, you and I begin to discuss, well, what is it? Well, obviously, if you're talking to a normal person, it's understood what the bounds are and what the bounds aren't. But if we may not be working with normal people. So in that case, how do you extrapolate in a more full and expressed way? What are the bounds that reasonably delimit one's ability to act in such a way where you basically infringe their sovereignty, trespass on their land that they have rights to, either through ownership or lease? That's their land. If you go on it, or if you allow someone else to go on it who otherwise would not have the right to go on it, you're facilitating trespass. Okay? If you don't have proper justification, it's trespass. That's against the law. Not only extremely immoral, that's basically man's version of rape, is to come on his grass and step on his property when he didn't allow you to. That's rape to men, is to come in the home. You understand? When he specifically has stated, this is my land, I reside here, I'm the master of this square footage, I decide who is allowed to come here, who's not allowed to come here. This person is barred, that person is barred. This person's allowed, subject to these conditionalities. That's every human being's fundamental right. As a free person here in America today, as a U.S. citizen, as an American, all of us have that right. And it's protected by the Fourth Amendment. The laws are extremely, crucially, and critically protective of our rights. So, people go to the farthest extremes and think, well, what about in emergency cases? And that is the question of the day. Anthony, you've told me, look, your mom wants to make up her idea. You were nicer about it. You were saying, look, her idea is that she feels justified because it seemed to her like it was an emergency. Anthony, plainly, I'll just state right here on the record, after some fleshing out and going back and forth on this, you eventually admitted plainly, after I asked you a few times to really just get the answer squarely. I said, look, in the let's presume that no more surprise facts come out, and that our current understanding of the facts is going to be consistent with the fullest picture once we both sit down, and no one's going to offer you anything magically so substantially new that it blows the evidentiary landscape completely in a new direction in terms of what we understand the facts to be. Okay, so if we hold the facts to be the way they are, what's the correct moral standard? I asked you, Anthony, if we hold the facts to be as they are, that's true, who's guilty? I essentially asked. And you admitted, you say, all right, John, if you were reluctant to answer me at first, but eventually you conceded that, look, John, if really everything is the same the way it is so far, yeah, your mom fucked up. That's pretty obvious. My only benefit of the doubt is that there's some new facts that are going to come out. The moral standard / the law is fucking clear. You're an idiot if you come in and use the key that your son gave you for an emergency purpose to frame it like you're having a phone conversation, gets mad, starts yelling, screaming at you, and fucking, throwing a tantrum in his own house. Good. That's about as stupid as you could get in terms of shooting yourself in the foot in life, in terms of the reckless consequences that you're going to inherit from your own stupidity. Okay, we understand these things, right? But within that conversation, Anthony, you and I never fully addressed the issue. Well, where can we get the definitive understanding of, because we know the law, all the law regulates all the concepts that regulates interactions between citizens, what the normal reasonable expectations are, who has rights and who doesn't have right to come into your house whenever they want to. Do they believe it is an emergency? If they do, does it have to be more than just a belief? What are the grounds? What are the protections? What are the limitations? This is a very important issue, extremely relevant. And Anthony, I told you on the phone, I said, listen, I'm so damn well researched, it would blow everybody's fucking mind. I mean, I'm like 50 to 80 human beings in some ways put together. It's freaky. In some ways at least. Regardless, here's the important thing. I told you that there's one particular Supreme Court case or legal case. It is from the Supreme Court, highest court in the land, see? And federal. One of the cases that they had, and in fact the particular case they had relatively recently in their history, just only from a couple years ago, they had to deal with a case that had almost the exact same issues regarding, can police just come onto your land, go and just do whatever they want because they unilaterally feel like? Of course, police and citizens have comparable rights. Police don't have special rights in the sense that, a human being couldn't come onto the land, but the police could. Not really. Well, so it gets interesting then. And if you think police do have special powers, well, then that only bolsters what would be my argument then, because then I'd say, well, then the regular, ordinary person who's just a relative, friend, or neighbor would have even less privileges and powers than such an officer would. Huh? Well, to finally answer the question that Anthony brought up, we're all going to put this to rest in front of everybody, where we go to the highest law in the land, where they discuss what the hell can you do lawfully and by justification that involves an excusable infringement on somebody's right, and when is it not excusable? We're going to find out right now. Here is the case, guys. And by the way, just to clearly, I haven't said this before yet on the record, but originally this was intended as a message just for Anthony. But by the course and nature of this conversation, where it's gone on, and how it happens to have taken a particular focus on not only
the events regarding strictly between me and her, but also a lot of the other history that relates to people that are beyond just me and my mother, namely her boyfriend. Because I'm covering this now in a more closer manner, I think, than I may have done prior. I'm going to allocate these set of videos not only as a messages to Anthony, but I'm going to put it in that official playlist. I'll ask that both you, Anthony, and that mother of mine here, who will also be listening to these, will also be, you're both asked to listen to these, and you're both, obviously if you're hearing these words now, you are both listening. And that'll be also, that'll be my prerequisite for our coming to understand what the issues are. Okay? There's nowhere left to hide. When you fuck with me, you don't. I don't play fuzzy that I'm blind and you get to hide somewhere around me and get away with it. I'm the last person on earth you want to mess with. I don't know why anyone on earth still thinks that it's possible to try to get a game and not end up losing in the end. It never will happen. It's like picking a fight with AI. You don't have a chance. But don't take my word for it. Let the Supreme Court of the United States tell you. In the case Caniglia versus Strong. Here's a story about what happened. This was decided back just a couple years ago. Almost to the day, actually. Very close. In May of 2021. During an argument with his wife, the petitioner of this case here before us, Edward Caniglia, placed a handgun on the dining room table while he's sitting there at home one day and asked his wife to just shoot him and get it over with. His wife instead left the home and spent the night at a hotel. Alright, not to comment about that marriage, but that already is not going in the right direction if that's what's happening. It's too bad. Well, whatever. Now, the next morning, she was unable to reach her husband by phone, so she called the police to request a welfare check. The responding officers accompanied Caniglia's wife to the home. So they're all together there now, where they encountered Caniglia himself there, sitting on the porch. The officers called an ambulance. Thereafter, based on the belief, now already we could tell if this is being, I'll tell you, cops mess a lot of things up, sad to say. I don't like that. That's not a good thing in life. I've seen too much of it though, so, you know, who knows how things will change in life and whatever, but I'm very not impressed with the totality of what I've seen. That's not good for the public confidence. Sad to say. I hope it changes. We like to cheer for the good guys, right? And hope that better things come. Always better and better. Improvement is good for everyone. But what I meant to say is that it seems that the belief would need to be what's called a reasonable belief, aka a reasonable suspicion, that Caniglia posed a risk to himself or others. Huh. Just on hearsay testimony from only the wife, where there's a, well, that's not the most important thing here anyway. But rather, we continue. Caniglia agreed, voluntarily in fact it seems, to go to the hospital for a psychiatric evaluation once the ambulance and EMS got there, on the condition, so he made a conditional acceptance, and just track where this goes, guys, because contract is law, law is contract. One of the terms of the Constitution says that no state can ever exercise a power to void the obligation of contract. That's very powerful. So, a Contract is offer and acceptance. Anything in life we do is all contract. It's all offer and acceptance. Hey, call me in 5 minutes? Sure, bro. Okay, bye. That's a contract. You people don't understand these things. If we all wake up and understand what's going on in life, and you realize, you begin to grow in awareness at the operational level, you can see things clear for what they are. Everything is contract because everything is offer acceptance, offer and acceptance. If someone makes conditional acceptance, that's a conditional acceptance that necessarily imposes the limitations that if the counteroffer is agreed upon by the original offerer, you're bound to that. You don't have a magical pass to then override it like a psychopath or a narcissist, like, because I'm authority. No. Not even the state can impair the obligation of contract. Contract law supersedes constitutional law. Did they teach you kids that in school? Most people don't realize that. You're falsely ingrained with the false doctrine that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. That's not true. The supreme law of the land is essentially the UCC. And half of you never even heard of the UCC. There's too much that you people don't understand. Contract law is the supreme law of the land. Contract law is superior to constitutional law. And for anyone who wants to challenge me on that, I'm quoting someone who I used to know somewhat and respected quite a bit, still do. Because this is, I came to this realization both independently, but also from this particular source sparking this specific topic. So I'm sort of paraphrasing from what I've heard already from someone in particular. But he's right, absolutely. If you want to challenge whether contractual law is superior to constitutional law, just consider this. Constitution guarantees that you have free speech, right? Okay. Go to work somewhere where they condition upon you that you have to sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, right? Go ahead, go sign that, and then come back out into the world and start telling people about whatever you want. Do you have free speech? Or are you going to get sued and have a judge put an order on you that's a gag order? But I thought you had free speech. Constitution, right? No. Contract law is superior law of the land. Because all of commerce is based on consent, which is only established through offer and acceptance, which is the basis of contract. All law is the execution of contract. All enactment is the execution of contract. Legislature are constituted by legislators, who are our agents. Do you understand? It gets wild. But anyway. Hey, today we can blur all the lines and derp. So here's where it gets interesting. Back to reading. Keneally agreed to go to the hospital for a psych eval on the condition that the officers not confiscate his firearms. You remember the pistol, the gun he had on that table last night, apparently. I think both of them are doing too much talking, because already the police know too much about what's happening. That should never be the case. But once Caniglia left, the officers located and seized his weapons anyway. Alright? So, now, police officers are allowed to lie, but you're not allowed to create false contract and defraud the people you're creating contract with. Now, there might be some exceptions to that. But his mental state. Trust me. This is some can of worms that people open up, and they're too stupid to realize that they're opening them up. I see it everywhere. Back to this. Once Caniglia sued, no surprise, claiming that the officers had entered his home and seized him, the human being, and his property, his firearms. Seized both of them to forcibly remove them and do with both of them whatever they wanted, without a warrant. That's right. You need a warrant to lawfully enter someone's house if it is not if you don't have the permission of the person who resides properly in the house. Ah, did my mother reside in this house? No. I reside in my house as the sole tenant. Did the king of this castle allow you to come in? No. If you don't have a warrant, you can't come in. Beautiful. Oh no, but John, it was emergency. Anthony, oh, it was emergency. Yeah? Let's see. Already, it's not just a violation of an ordinary kind. This is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. Serious stuff. Ooh, those are the biggest money civil suits you could get, is when a constitutional right is violated. And it gets even crazier, because if it's multiple people who are cooperating in order to deprive someone of their right, just wait till the end of this, where I'll bring up another very quick short law that will blow your minds. Just wait. For now, some more case law, as we'll read. The district court granted summary judgment to the officers, which means the lower level courts, who are, as I've come to understand, not very intelligent a lot of the time, they automatically just sided with the officers. The middle level appeal level, which for them was the First Circuit, they affirmed or agreed with the trial level court, which is the bottom level, first regular level court, district court, where they extrapolated from the court's decision, that same court, I suppose, in some old prior case that set the precedent with regards to how they should decide this aspect of the law and interpret it. In that case, Katie versus Dombrowski, which they'll refer to that case as Katie for short. They extrapolated from that decision a theory, it says, that the officer's removal of Caniglia in that situation and the removal of his firearms from his home was justified by a community caretaking exception to the warrant requirement. Right? Yeah, you don't need a warrant. If we just feel like someone might be in trouble, then we could go in as we please, 'cause we're so concerned about how they're doing. Ah, magic, right? Sure. Next paragraph, it says, held. That is, here's what our court here holds. What court is this? This is the highest court in the United States. All 9 of them voted unanimously for the same decision. We hold that neither the holding nor the logic of Katie justifies such warrantless searches and seizures in the home. The Katie case precedent held that a warrantless search of an impounded vehicle for a firearm that's unsecured didn't violate that Fourth Amendment. In reaching that conclusion, the court noted that the officers who patrol the public highways are often called to discharge non-criminal community caretaking functions. In addition to being law enforcement, they're also, community caretakers. They check up on people. They do nice things like that, such as responding to disabled vehicles or investigating accidents. We note, of course, that this is all on the public highways in the public domain. Now that obviously, to wit, contrasts from a man in his private domicile. And that's where you're going to start running into the trouble here. They continue, but searches of vehicles and homes are constitutionally different, even as that Katie opinion itself repeatedly stressed correctly. That's right. The very core of the Fourth Amendment's guarantee is the right of a person. I want you to listen closely, everybody. Is the right of a person to retreat into his or her home and, quote, there be free from unreasonable government intrusion. It's his right as a most fundamental right of an American is that if you don't want to let the cops into your house because some nutty other person thought it'd be a good idea to force them on you, launch them on you like an attack with missiles, pounding at my fucking door, I don't have to open the door. And furthermore, if I don't want to, you don't have a tyrannical right to override my desire to keep my door shut. That's called infringing on someone's sovereignty. That's called sickness of the deepest kind mentally. On you. A recognition of the existence of community caretaking tasks like rendering aid to motorists and disabled vehicles is not an open license to perform these caretaking tasks anywhere at all. So, we have Justice Clarence Thomas delivering the opinion of that unanimous court. We'll read it here. We'll read the majority opinion and then a little bit of excerpts from another opinion that even better identify the elements that we're looking to identify today. Decades ago, this court held that a warrantless search of an impounded vehicle for an unsecured firearm did not violate the Fourth Amendment. In Katie versus Dombrowski. In reaching this conclusion, the court observed that police officers who patrol the public highways are often called to discharge non-criminal community caretaking functions, such as responding to disabled vehicles or investigating accidents. The question today is whether Katie's acknowledgement of these caretaking duties creates a standalone doctrine that justifies warrantless entry, searches, and seizing human beings or property, either one, from a person's home. It does not. You can't do it just because you feel like it, even if you're the police. And definitely if you're a regular human being. You're all going to pay. You're idiots, all of you. Fucking morons. During an argument with his wife at their Rhode Island home, Edward Caniglia, the petitioner here who's seeking the justice, thank God he got it, received a handgun from the bedroom, put it on the dining room table, and asked his wife to shoot him now and get it over with. She declined and instead left to spend the night at a hotel. The next morning, when petitioner's wife discovered that she could not reach him by telephone, she called the police. The respondents, in this case, the ones fighting the petitioner in this controversy here, to request a welfare check, she did. The respondents accompanied petitioner's wife to the home. That is, the cops accompanied Caniglia's, woman Caniglia, to that home of theirs. They encountered petitioner on the porch. Petitioner spoke with respondents. That is, Caniglia, the man, spoke with the cops and confirmed his wife's account of the argument. Okay, he admitted that, but denied that he was suicidal. Very good. Respondents, however, that is the police, thought that Caniglia, petitioner, posed a risk to himself or others, even though he denied it. That's funny. So, without corroboration of hearsay evidence, they still want to force a psychiatric hold. Well, unfortunately for Caniglia, he, it seems, would end up volunteering. So, you got to know your rights, kids. Now, they called an ambulance, and petitioner agreed to go, to the hospital for a psychiatric evaluation, probably to prove that everything's fine. But only after respondents allegedly promised, allegedly, you people need to do your cross-examinations a little more aggressively. Shouldn't be, at this point it's at the Supreme Court, we still don't know if it happened or not. You're idiots. People protect the system a little bit too much here. Allegedly promised not to confiscate his firearms. Once the ambulance had taken petitioner away, however, it's Barber syndrome, psychopathy, narcissism. We do what we want. We do what we want. It's my world. I'm God. Sick. Respondent seized the weapons. Guided by petitioner's wife, whom, oh, by the way, to just inform fully, the law says that anytime someone is even meets the burden for establishes the burden of proof that's required to suspect them reasonably of having a mental disorder. But you know what? Him agreeing to do a psych eval doesn't constitute reasonably the steps. They're fucked. Those police are just going to be bleeding money for this guy now because they're dumbasses. I see a lot of problems with what they did. All right? Can't operate on hearsay. I know the law better than these guys do. Wow. You're all fucked. I'm just saying. How many people... I've been sitting here this whole time, like, just sitting on power, and you guys can't dethrone me off of it. But you give me the power. You all give me the power when you keep making mistakes in front of me. That's you bowing in front of me and spilling your power and giving it to me. You all do it through your stupidity. I watch you make your mistakes. I let you make the mistakes that you all make. Did you see me fuck up anywhere? What looks like me fucking up to you was actually me pre-planning how beautiful the chess is coming now. You fucking people didn't think I understood all this from the beginning? Before any fucking police were ever called even? I'm fucking superhuman AI, you idiots. It's all designed to make your stupidity and moral evil only entrap your own selves. You're all stupid idiots. Except you, Anthony. I'm not talking to you about this. But all the others. Police, the hospital staff at the ER, the hospital staff when they held me, and the mother most of all. Most of all. Guided by petitioner's wife, whom they allegedly misinformed about his wishes. What is this saying? The police were guided by the petitioner's wife, whom the police misinformed her about what he wanted done. So where he said his wishes were that they don't take those weapons, they went in and lied to her about it. We do what we want, see? Go kill yourselves. Not cops as a whole, but the particular officers who had that little power trip. No, you. Take off the badge first, because I'm not talking to the badge. I'm talking to the human being behind that badge who did something fucked up. Kill yourselves. And then let that badge be worn by the honorable man who's going to carry out the duty of that badge properly. I love that. Do that. That's beautiful. Hold the beauty of that for us in this world. That's the beauty we love. Honor that. All right? Respondent simply entered the home like I could do whatever I want, la-di-da, and took 2 handguns just because they wanted to. Under the color of law, see? Not real law, color of law. Petitioner sued, claiming that respondents violated the 4th Amendment when they entered his home against his wish and seized his things against his wish. That's his house, see? When we got independence from Great Britain, we didn't subject ourselves to be subjects to our own rules. We created the rules to serve us, not to have us serve it. Difference. We stayed kings. We're a society of 300 million kings who made king's law for kings. You need to get the right context to understand the different presumptions about how we live. When you're really the sovereign, you step into a sovereign mentality, your eyes begin to realize how it all really is supposed to click. From the very beginning, it was designed this way by beautiful brilliance, higher than anything most people today could even understand. But I see it as one of the most beautiful things. The Bible's most beautiful things, and the 4 founding fathers are absolutely unbelievable. No joke. The district court, as suggested before, granted summary judgment. That's the level 1 court. Level 2 court, called the First Circuit, affirmed only on the ground, Justice Clarence Thomas states, that the decision to remove a man from his home and his guns from those premises of his, well, fell within a community caretaking exception to the warrant. So that's what, therefore, they didn't need a warrant, they say, right? Citing this court statement in Katy, citing the Supreme Court's statement in a previous case that this same Supreme Court did a while ago, that Katy case, right, that police officers often have non-criminal reasons to interact with motorists, therefore going into the house should be the same thing, right? Can you see now why I want to become a judge? Because even in the highest decisions, and by the way, I read hundreds and hundreds of these like a crazy person, and I see errors in these things that no one else seems to catch. I don't know, is it corruption or is it stupidity? I can't figure it out. Is it the fluoride in the water, or is it they love money and secret society loyalties? Which one is it? What's the deeper true cause of the misalignments of true justice? I mean, we'll never get the answer to that question. All right? But they extrapolated a freestanding exception that applies to both cars and homes. Oh, look at that magic. Does that seem logical to you if you know how law works and rights? No. So, and quoting them, they say, listen, threats to individual and community safety are not confined to the highways, guys. That's why it's okay for us to go into homes too, because threats could be anywhere. See? Stupid. I hate stupidity. I spit on it. It's so low, like, go rip your eyes out and kill yourself if you're not worthy to live amongst us fucking people. What's wrong with you? Don't become a judge if you can't be God in that chair. If you're anything less than that, kill yourself to fucking prevent yourself from dishonoring that seat. Give it to me. I'll do better. Go home. Go suck on your thumb, moron. Fucking mess my law up. Accordingly, the First Circuit saw no need to consider, therefore, whether anyone had consented to the respondent's action. You don't need consent. It's 2021. Or whether any state law permitted this kind of intervention. We don't need to see if our policies follow the law. Come on. All that mattered was that the respondent's efforts to protect the petitioner, that is, the cops' efforts to protect the poor Caniglia and those around him, were distinct from criminal investigation. So it's as if, well, if it's a crime you're investigating, you need a warrant. But if it's not a crime, then you could do whatever you want. Sick. That falls within the realm of reason, right? Yeah. Thank God that was stopped by these guys. Sometimes the Supreme Court even misses stuff too. So, like in my head, I establish a fantasy higher court that's even higher than the Supreme Court, where I overrule the Supreme Court. But I'll get other people to agree and be like, oh my God, you might be the first person to successfully show how the Supreme Court of the United States was wrong. I'm like, yeah, I do it every day. Gabba B all the way. I am the closest thing to God on this earth. All that mattered, and it's true, that's right. Find somebody who's more intelligent than me. You can't do it. All that mattered was that respondent's efforts to protect petitioner and those around him were distinct from the normal work of criminal investigation. We read this already, fell within the realm of reason and generally tracked what the court viewed to be sound police procedure. So if I read that case law in itself, already I'd stand there and go, yeah, send that to the Supreme Court. If they're awake that morning and they had enough coffee to power their brains, they'll all unanimously overrule it. Oh, I'm right, look at that. No surprise. Nothing is ever a surprise. You people are pawns. Even when you do wrong, I still pre-factor your wrongness into how you're going to screw yourself later. It's hopeless. It's like wriggling out of an anaconda. I will win in the end. Everything is superhumanly designed. You have no idea. You're all being sent to choke yourselves out with your own evil till you're all dead in your own, metaphorically speaking. Don't get me wrong, and I mean that. because I've seen what evil is, and it's called you sickos using my words against me. I know where I will end up in this life, and it's exactly where I'm meant to be. I'm calling my shots now like Babe Ruth called his, and you'll see. Anyway, they view it to be sound police procedure. We granted certiorari, which means we grant a special consideration that even though 2 levels of courts under us all sided with the cops, which normally can be, sadly, a barrier that prevents a petitioner's ability to even reach the Supreme Court. They need a special permission from the Supreme Court where they are notified, like, hey, we had like 2 layers of court deny us, but we're pretty sure we're right anyway, so we need you to really just please use your discretion to just rescue us because you're good. Okay? They granted it. And thus they get to review this case. These are real people in their lives. The Fourth Amendment protects, quote, the right of the people to be secure in themselves, that is, their own persons, their houses, their papers, their things, and their effects, against unreasonable searches, you can't come in, and unreasonable seizures, you can't take whatever things and or people that you just want. The very core of this guarantee is the right of a man to retreat into his own home and there be free for sure from unreasonable governmental intrusion. Is it reasonable for my mom to come in, open the door with a key, and let them in, and I tell them clearly as soon as they come in, I plant all the traps so that no matter what they do, I win? It's just a matter of how smart they are to mitigate the damage control so that they manage their degrees of losing, or they just swing it wide open as if they're just sustaining big losses. But they usually are too dumb to realize what I'm doing, so they're all just loss. So I accumulate all these wonderful claims. Now I sit here on my claims, and I'm in the leverage position. You people don't understand the depth, and I don't even have to strain to do this. I do this in my sleep. I utilize 0.0001% of my total capacity to do this. All of my capacity, I would probably take over the whole planet. Maybe that is what I'm trying to do this whole time. In extremely complex ways that cause me to become known everywhere, in subtle ways that, you would think that it's all amazing. Nothing is an accident. Everything is like... if I'm the real life version of Lucy from that movie, or Limitless, but probably even closer to Lucy. You have no idea. Now, the very core of this guarantee, and we said this already, to be sure, the Fourth Amendment does not prohibit all unwelcome intrusions on private property, only unreasonable ones. We have thus recognized a few permissible invasions of the home and its curtilage. Perhaps most familiar, for example, are searches and seizures pursuant to a valid warrant. Of course, if you get a warrant, then it works. We have also held that law enforcement officers may enter private property without a warrant when certain and yet I don't know how to pronounce every word in the English language yet. I don't know. What is that? Exigent? Yeah. Exigent circumstances exist, including the need to render emergency assistance to an injured occupant. And anytime you see a word at law, such as like something that characterizes something else, like the word injured, in invisible parentheses next to every single word you see as a qualifier, it also says the word reasonable, but you just can't see it. Okay? So when quoting render emergency assistance to an injured occupant, it means someone who we reasonably hold to be injured. What does that mean? It means that reasonable minds of prudent nature would, across the board, not fail to differ in holding the same conclusion that there is clearly, convincingly, and apparently, right on the face of the situation, an injured person clearly here in the case or the matter or the circumstance that we're dealing with. Okay? Or to protect an occupant from imminent injury. And again, the word imminent has an invisible word reasonable right next to it. To protect an occupant from reasonably imminent injury. What does imminent mean? It means is almost guaranteed. Practically certain, if you do nothing else to change it, that is, you can expect that it will be the it's greater than substantial likelihood. It's clearly going to happen, or almost fully clearly. It's a virtual certainty. Okay? And of course, officers may generally take actions that any private citizen might do without fear of liability. So in that sense, the rights of officers to do these things and the rights of regular citizens to do these things are equal, because they're both, they're both the same. They're peer levels on that. Okay, things such as approaching a home and knocking on the front door. Ah, that's right. That's all those officers and EMS staff were entitled to do that day on October 9th, on that Sunday, is knock on my door a whole bunch. Then you can go away now. The First Circuit's community caretaking rule, however, that middle court, that rule goes beyond anything this Supreme Court has ever recognized. The decision below assumed that the respondents, the police, lacked a warrant or consent, that they didn't have either, and it expressly disclaimed the possibility that they were reacting to a crime. There was no crime here. The court, same situation in mind. No one was dealing with a crime. No one claimed to be dealing with a crime. And the ones who entered my house here didn't have a warrant. And they didn't have my consent. Because as soon as they came in, I immediately made sure to say, "You're trespassing." Once I said that and looked at their body cameras while I said it, I'm planting evidence so that me a year and a half later already will have all the fucking workings. You're all trapped. The worst thing you could do is ever displease me in a way that's morally incorrect. You will pay. There's no way you will escape the internal prison I'll set up for you. It'll just look like an illusion. You think you could get away with it. You think, no. You're in my web forever. The day you wake up, before you even... it's inhuman. You're done. You to think against me is thought crime. I'll read your mind through the damn walls, practically. You're done. You're done. You just don't realize it yet. When God's on your side, because you're consistent with God morality, I get God backing me. So when I say someone's house is going to burn, 6 days later, there's an accidental spill and their fire starts in their home. When I say God's going to smash somebody's face, oh, that person ended up in the hospital 12 hours later with a skull face fracture in the bone. What do you think this is? It's not a game. The hell you think you're playing with? The court also declined to consider whether any recognized exigent circumstances were present. In other words, they didn't have to look for any additional justifications that ordinarily we need to go to that list to see, like, hey, does this classify as like a valid exception? Nah, because they believe that the respondents had forfeited the point. Now, what are they getting at? Nor did it find that the respondents' actions were akin to what a private citizen might have had authority to do if the petitioner's wife had approached a neighbor for assistance instead of the police. Here again, it's correctly saying police or neighbor. Any human being is the same thing. Doesn't matter. You don't have special rights one way or the other way. Neither the holding nor the logic of the Katie case and their decision and their opinion is justified that approach that they took in real life. True, Katie also involved a warrantless search for a firearm in that case, but the location of that search, as we said earlier, was an impounded vehicle, not a home, a constitutional difference that the opinion repeatedly stressed. In fact, Katie expressly contrasted its treatment of a vehicle already under police control with a search of a car, quote, parked adjacent to the dwelling place of the owner. Katie's unmistakable distinction between vehicles and homes, see, they even make the distinction in the case, but future cases will misapply it. I've seen it happen all the time in my analyses of all the case law that's ever existed. So, you know, like an AI that scans everything to become super smart, I do the same thing. So I go to the case law to find where humanity's weaknesses are so that I could know where the leverage points I go to, and I'll turn, and I have it all mapped out. You're all going down because I have all the shit mapped out. You can't stop it. I have a huge master plan. You could do nothing except watch at this point. You have no power to do anything about it. I already see where all the laws and the weaknesses are, how I'm going to surprise everybody in every imaginable way, in the most public ways possible. It's shit you couldn't even imagine, and they'll worship me like crazy because I'll be the first to ever blow it into your faces and look at how weak your own structures are, but you stayed blind to where those oversights are. Only a perfect GABA B upregulated masterpiece can see them to go, ah, ding, 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 and ah, and the new fucking leader is here. So clear. Everything I look at is so clear. I have to fake being a dumbass sometimes. I see fucking everything. Not a single fucking thing has escaped my fucking awareness since fucking 2016. Nothing. Anything happening around me, anywhere at all, ever, about anything, is super fucking clear. Super logic, super mind, super everything. You're all being led, but morally, see? You're all being led to, the immoral ones are being tricked into collapsing yourselves so that you're out of the equation. Only moral ones will be sustained in full integrity, and then we have a new civilization where only the moral ones lead. It's the perfect answer to the Luciferian satanic stuff they've been putting. We're all going to save the world. No problem. Katie's unmistakable and by the way, I'm so smart that I'm planting this stuff here on purpose to trick you people to misusing it in the future so that I could actually win even more in ways you can't perceive now. Because, see, do you get how helpless you are? It is super AI. So therefore, learn to just sit down and shut up and stop even attempting to dream anything. Now you're getting it. Now that's called morality. It's called don't transgress against the right of another sovereign. And if he wants to be an AI god over the rest of humanity, let him do that, because that's his right too. Ah, now you get it. And now when you support that guy, now you're winning and God smiles on you too. People learning yet? This quote comes from a portion of the opinion explaining that the frequency with which vehicles can become disabled or involved in accidents on public highways often requires police to perform non-criminal community caretaking functions, such as providing aid to motorists. But this recognition that police officers perform many civic tasks in modern society was just that, a recognition that he said, good. Justice Clarence today has won the You Are an AI God 2 award. His analysis is perfect. Not all of their analyses are perfect. I'll find a lot of the ones that are incorrect very easily once I look. But I like to see that the Supreme Court is usually right. See, you regular humans would think they're right 98% of the time. Actually, uh, because blind never realizes its own blindness, you need someone much, much higher, neurally dense, to tell you how stupid they actually are, the ones below them. So, to your surprise, the Supreme Court is wrong. Well, first of all, courts in general, they think they're wrong less than 20% of the time. I'd say the real number is closer to about 45 or 50. Now, that would blow society's minds if they were to appreciate the possibility of that even being true. But you people don't even know what you're doing. You people don't even know what you're doing. It's as if I watch all of you drunkenly get into cars every day, drive around, hit each other a lot, cause fatal injuries everywhere, drunkenly stumble back out of your cars half dead, cry, wonder why everything sucks and hurts so bad, but you can't remember, and then you all pass out, and then you wake up again the next day and get really drunk, and then you do it again. And you do that every day for 50 years, and then your lives end, naturally. That's what all of you do looks like to me. You think that fucking impresses me? The way you look at, not even dogs, yeah, dogs too. The way you look at the stupidest breeds of dogs as they interact with each other, and you and your relative superiority to the dog, you'll use your human mind to look at them and you'll be like, what do you fucking look? Why would you do that? And then what is that? What is that inefficiency? What is that? Why would you do that? No, that makes no sense. No, that's stupid. Well, why'd you forget that? You just did that a moment ago. Why'd you do? What is that? What is that? What is that? And you just laugh at their incompetence. It's so funny. It's so funny. You're just like, you could look at them all day long. You can have a herd of puppies, and all the puppies are cute, but the stupid dogs, and then just like, you're just not impressed. You're like, wow. Good thing we have society run by humans, because that couldn't do anything for you if that was as good as it got. You're all that. And you don't even see it because you're stuck at that level itself. Literally, everything you do, humanity, is fucking... It's more retarded, actually, than it's ever been. No, humanity didn't advance. You got worse after about 1940. You can't see it. You don't have the neural density to be able to appreciate it. You're all in the drunken fog yourselves now. It's hopeless. From my vantage point, it's extremely easy to herd you around, though. With super, super intelligence, it's like you don't have to strive to herd your dog around into control and to accomplish your objective when the dog doesn't even realize it's being coerced in the first place. Now, I'm using super high allocation methods to accomplish things that the one who sent me has brought me here for. And I'm speaking metaphorically, but I believe it. We're all sent here for a purpose, and many of us believe in a God that causes us to live lives with certain meanings and purposes. So good. Now, suffer from your mistakes responsibly like good karmic souls and bow. That's it. But this recognition that police officers perform many civic tasks in modern society was just out of recognition of these tasks, that they exist, and not an open-ended license to perform them anywhere. Ah, distinction, wisdom, clarity, logic. Thank you, Clarence. Sorry to see that they're attacking you. Satanic forces love to reverse what is good. What is reasonable for vehicles is different from what is reasonable for homes. Ah, doesn't take a genius to figure that out, Earth. Katie acknowledged as much. And by the way, you see here an example of an opinion regarding a case where the outcome was essentially rescued properly. You wouldn't believe how many cases I come across where I read, the judge got it wrong, and then, womp womp, no rescue ever comes. I read cases, sadly, where people got falsely accused of rape, and I could see in the opinion where they outline the facts how the law was misapplied. And I almost want to call the prisons and the courts and be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? He's still sitting there? I'll look up the name of the guy. I want to fucking do a petition. Like, you aren't guilty by the law. You're being held in. What the fuck? You people are stupid and crazy, actually, and immoral for even letting these things happen in your midst. God hates that stuff. You're all going to suffer by his cause. Naturally. Katie acknowledged as much, and this court has repeatedly declined to expand the scope of exceptions to the warrant requirement to permit warrantless entry into the home. Barbara and NYPD, do you get it? We thus vacate the judgment below and remand for further proceedings. Beautiful. It is so ordered. Thank you very much. I am, of course, and Chief Justice Roberts. That's right. This is the other one I wanted to read. I think it is. Justice Alito. I can't, yeah, it was one of these two that had the actual, like an even slightly fuller list that we'll want to use. One of these, which one was it? I'm going through here. Oh, Kavanaugh. Oh, Kavanaugh, good old Trump pick. All right, Kavanaugh, let's see how smart you are. I join the court's opinion in full. Good, you're smart then. I write well, we know that already, that all of them voted this way. I write separately to underscore and elaborate on the Chief Justice's points that the court's decision does not prevent police officers. What is this saying? I write separately to underscore and elaborate on the Chief Justice's point. Right, because he has to write a separate one if he wants to make an additional, like, elaboration about something that's even more particular than that first generalized opinion of that comes from the entire court, so to speak. The court's decision does not prevent police officers from taking reasonable steps to assist those who are inside a home and in need of aid. So this is where my mom comes in. Oh, my son's in need of aid. He's screaming. He was on the phone, now he's screaming and yelling and maybe throwing a tantrum. I mean, he's banging on things. That could mean he's trying to kill himself. I don't know what the hell she actually said from personal knowledge, but I have what I have in terms of all sorts of other evidence. It points a very disturbing picture of how the stupid woman's mind makes more of a twisting the more minutes and hours you let them sit there to twist stories further and further. I watched the degree of twist, the nature of facts twisted. It's all bad karma. Everybody's going to hell. Very disgusting to do betrayal against man. Very disgusting. God hates it. Disgusting. So, they say, though, our decision doesn't prevent police officers from taking those reasonable steps that are needed in order to assist those who are inside a home that really need aid. For example, as I will explain, police officers may enter a home without a warrant. You know, regardless of whether or not the warrant or the consent are there. In circumstances where they are reasonably trying to prevent a potential suicide. Ah, okay. Potential suicide. And by potential, what they really mean is reasonable suspicion. Okay. Or to help an elderly person who has been out of contact and may have fallen. Reasonable suspicion that they may have fallen, or reasonable suspicion that they have in fact suffered a serious injury, where serious injury is defined as an injury affecting the bones, organs, vision, like something like you're maimed, you can't walk, you're fucking crippled, like you need a hospital, is serious injury. All right. Ratified in 1791, made applicable to the states in 1868, the Fourth Amendment protects the right of the people to be secure, as we read already, in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures. As the constitutional text establishes, the ultimate touchstone of the Fourth Amendment is reasonableness. This court has said that a warrant supported by probable cause is ordinarily required for any officers in order to enter a person's home. But drawing on common law analogies and a common sense appraisal of what is reasonable, this court has also recognized various situations where a warrant is not required. For example, the exigent circumstances doctrine allows officers to enter a home without a warrant in certain situations, including, and now guys, right here, you're going to have the fullest list ever enshrined in any writing from any source of law that you're going to get. And this law is now from the highest, confirmed at the highest level of law that there could be. So there's nothing past this for you people. Including to fight a fire and investigate its cause. Okay. Was there a fire in my house that day? No fire. Okay, cross that out. Yeah, check. Next. The second one, to prevent the imminent destruction of evidence. Oh, was it reasonably imminent that evidence would be destroyed? No, that doesn't make sense either. Not applicable. Cross that one out. All right, next. To engage in hot pursuit of a fleeing felon. It can't even be any criminal. It has to actually be a felon. All right. Or to prevent a suspect's escape. All right. Is there a felon? No. Was there a suspect to a crime who was looking to furthermore escape? No. Okay. This doesn't apply. Cross that out. All right. Next. To address a threat to the safety of the law enforcement officers. Was there a threat to the safety of law enforcement officers? No. But they did try subsequently after entering my home, even though I told them they're trespassing. They both refused to leave and eventually, without cause, restrained my own freedom of movement in my apartment. I love the money cash cow they keep sending out my way. I don't know why they do it so much. They must love me. No, you fools. It's God who loves me when he puts me in situations and positions of power over the rest of you people. Now, so it's not a threat to the safety of law enforcement officers or the general public. No, that's not it. Okay. And then to render emergency assistance. Oh, emergency assistance. That's the one that she wants. All right. If you bend reality to the way you want to see it, and you squint your eyes hard enough and maybe close your eyes completely, actually, and punch yourself in the eyes hard enough until you see spots, maybe you can make those spots conform to what you think should be there. You psychos. To render emergency assistance, it says, to uninjured occupant. You mean someone who's already reasonably injured, demonstrably, clearly, convincingly so? No, that's definitely not the case. You can't just go into whoever's house that you want because you made up a reason. See how that works? Or to protect an occupant who reasonably is threatened with serious injury, the definition of serious injury being as I specified earlier, not just any injury. Distinct. Now that's a full stop at the end of that sentence. That's a period. That's it. They cited a whole bunch of cases and got every single element that's possibly ever recognizable at law. Does my case clearly fit any of those? No. You can't make up in your mind that there's an emergency because you want to imagine an emergency. But it's going to cost everybody a lot to have even tried to do something that goes against me and what I want. It will never end until payment is brought in full. So when I say you come and you bow and you atone fully, I'm giving you the hint of what it takes to resolve the situation properly. Those are the instructions that Christ, God, Moses, Solomon, they all say the same thing when they upregulate their GABA B receptors too. They do it through a 40-day fast. I did it through 2 research chemicals that combined that they didn't have back in those days. It's the same thing. It's called we can see now. So we get very excited to tell you from our instinct. It all is the same thing over and over again. Every time one of us comes into incarnation to tell you. There is no emergency, confirmed by the court. You people are so blind, you walk into all of my traps consistently. I leave the window open exactly so that my mom can come in later and close it, thereby showing that she was in my apartment. You can't outthink super AI. You are all morons. Just bow and admit you're never good enough. Then you'll be speaking truth for the first time ever. It's like ducks and dogs in a world of advanced aliens. Just give up.
Here, Peterson uses an example of a husband and wife, but it's applicable to parents and sons and daughters the same.
And then with regards to your partner, here's something to think about with regards to roles. So my wife and I have had this discussion many times, and one of the discussions is, well, how are we to treat each other in public? And it isn't, her name is Tammy, the discussion isn't how should Jordan treat Tammy in public or how should Tammy treat Jordan. That's not the discussion. This isn't personal. It's how should a wife treat her husband and how should a husband treat his wife. It's impersonal.
So where someone in my mom's position, for example, is more oriented about, at least on the surface level it seems, to be more concerned with how Barbara's being treated today. Barbara doesn't like this. I don't like this. So I will be treated differently by that son of mine, Jonathan. No. The correct thing to morally evaluate is how does this class of people ought to properly relate to this other class of people.
And it's partly, you don't put your partner down in public. Why? Well, it's not because you're hurting that person's feelings. That's not why. It's that you're denigrating the relationship that you are in voluntarily.
You think it's appropriate to put me in a position where I have EMS and police knocking on my fucking door in front of everybody else in this building and making just another scene? Why, there's already been only so many, you see. It is about the hurt feeling too. Peterson's wrong in that it's not about hurt feelings. He says, well, it is that. The respect and the dignity is number one. But the other critical factor is you don't put someone in that position. The only type of person who ever would is a cluster B type personality, narcissistic, psychopathic.
You know, and I've some of the most painful days I've ever spent, one in particular I spent with a group of men who had been in therapy for their marriage and who bloody well needed it, I can tell you that. And they spent their whole day complaining about their wives. Like, it just made me sweat the whole day. I thought, I can't believe I'm here with you guys. I can't tell you why I was. It's just, you know, it was just happenstance more than anything.
And the typical delusion of one such person in my mom's position, when she turns to denigrate and essentially defame and otherwise just talk bad about her own son to other people, the naive assumption that this disconnected person makes is that somehow this empowers them and their reputation and their ego while effectively putting down the other without realizing what's actually happening naturally.
And I thought, how can you be so damn dumb It's like, it's certainly possible that you married barbarian witches, fine, but you don't have, you're so lacking in sense that you would discuss that in public, not noticing that you picked them. So basically all you're doing is holding up a sign and waving it constantly that says, I'm an idiot, right?
And what do you think happens when you criticize the person who everybody knows is the one who you raised and you were responsible for shaping how they turned out? It's the same thing. That's why, one of the many reasons why, you don't do it.
So, well, back to responsibility.
Listen close, Mom.
You have a responsibility to those whom you love and are obligated to ensure that they manifest themselves in a manner that's most beneficial to them over the long run.
You think bringing out a parade of emergency vehicles under false pretenses to get me confined against my will for an extended period of time, and then to furthermore ignore me for 7 months straight afterwards, is causing for your son to properly appear and manifest in this world in the ideal way?
Help your wife figure out how not to make a fool of herself in public. And she extends to you the same courtesy. And it's partly maintenance of the sacred nature of the relationship. It has nothing to do with you or her, precisely. It's broader and wider than that. Child, partner, well, you've abrogated your responsibility. And then you might say, well, so then that's how the community becomes corrupt. That's how the community starts to be corrupt.
Now turning promptly to another matter regarding my mom's boyfriend and me. Two people who my mom stands in the middle in between and tries to figure out, well, which one do I serve? If they're not together and we're not all harmonizing, well, my son says there's a problem with what I've allowed to have happen from the boyfriend, and the boyfriend is making it look like oh, how bad that son of mine is, and then it goes back and forth. So is my son right? Am I motivated to realize that he might be right, or am I motivated to stay blind to that?
Is that people turn a blind eye to emergent pathology when they know it's pathological. That's exactly what the Egyptian story says. Osiris is overcome by Seth because he's willfully blind. Willfully blind, which means he knows, but refuses to, he knows, quote, his predator detection systems have gone off. Monster. Well, then you're supposed to look, okay, exactly what sort of monster is this? Well, it doesn't have wings, it doesn't have a tail, You cut it down into you cut it from the monster that it could be into the monster that it is. That's the first step. And then you take the appropriate steps. And then you also notice the other monsters, because here's something to think about.
When my own mom admits, by an eventual point in time, that her boyfriend was wrong to do certain things against me and against my dignity. And when I said, therefore, if it is established that it's wrong in agreement, that I'm owed an apology and owed an appropriate course of conduct, and that the right insistences and conversations need to take place, what then? Should these things not happen?
You're going to pay a price for speaking up. But you're going to pay a price for not speaking up. So it's like monsters on the right, monsters on the left. Pick the ones you want to battle with. If you decide not to make your stand, you weaken yourself. If you do it 100 times, then even if the monster was only this big, now you're this big, it's going to eat you. When it was this big, you probably could have kicked it across the room. It's too late for that. You've capitulated and capitulated.
Where now it's finally capitulated to the point that even when the man is clearly wrong, clearly abusing the son of hers and treating him with disrespect, that he's immune from accountability. And then when that victim, her son, unjustly receiving the abuse, later says, look, I haven't gotten an apology from him from a year, even though I'm owed one. What kind of idiot is this? She steps in and defends him. No, he's not an idiot. That's how far the capitulation goes. And the brainwashing.
Because as long as what we're doing is working, then we both know enough already. As soon as what we're doing together isn't working, then that's instant evidence that there's something about us that needs to be updated. And you might think, well, that's a terrible thing. And the answer is yes, of course it is. It's a terrible thing. But it's also the thing, and this is the next stage of the development of this, let's call it universal morality. It's like the universal morality might be found in the answer to the question, what should you do when you make a mistake? Now, one answer is catastrophic dissolution.
That is, of course, the situation that this ended up turning into. Complete catastrophic dissolution or disintegration.
That's a collapse into chaos. Well, no one is going to pick that voluntarily. Let's put it that way.
Unless your name is Barbara Winslow.
It's unbelievably unpleasant, terribly anxiety provoking, shameful, and painful all at the same time. Worse, it can mean the absence of positive emotion. Because if you really collapse into chaos, not only are you overwhelmed by negative emotion, but the positive emotion system shut off. And that's what happens to someone who's extraordinarily depressed and also hyper anxious at the same time. Not only are they suffering from an excess of negative emotion, but they've got no incentive movement forward whatsoever. Okay, so that's not an optimal solution because it takes you out. The other possible, and so I would call that a nihilistic solution or a chaotic solution. It's not a solution, it's a dissolution. And you could think about it as a precursor to a potential solution, but it's very easy to get stuck there. And that's why Jonah could have stayed in the belly of the whale, along with all the other people that were eaten by the whale and never got back out. And you see people like that all the time. Their error has come along, blown out their frames of reference, they've collapsed into the underworld, into the chaotic underworld, and they don't know how to get out. There's any number of states of being that can overwhelm you when the bottom has fallen out of your life. So it isn't something that people are going to, it's not an optimal solution, let's put it that way. Well, the other, that's a nihilistic solution, a collapse. The other solution is we're talking.
And while being in a position of potentially or considering talking, when you're the apparent wrongdoer, at least in the eyes of everybody else, and you're in a situation where you may be talking to someone like your son, someone who you've wrongly hurt and transgressed against, what are some of the wrong ways of acting in a situation like that that may be pathological?
We're talking, and I don't get what I want from you, and so I say, you better not do that again. I don't want to see that from you again. And that's a tyrannical attitude, right?
Like coming up to that son of yours and saying, oh, you won't do therapy? Oh, well, then there is no chance of reconciliation. It has to be my way, my ideas, me, control, me.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my universe of order and its predictions, and I'm going to say, you go along with this, or I'm going to punish you. But that can easily degenerate into tyranny. And one of the methods that I can choose to use, if I don't want to encounter error, is just to enforce my will on everyone else. And I think when that happens personally, and in the family, and in the community, and in the state, all at the same time, then you get the emergence of a tyranny.
Oh, I could just go take your passports whenever I want. I can call police on you whenever I want. I can take your grandfather away from here, from your life, whenever I want. I can make my boyfriend come to treat you however he wants. You don't have rights. I decide what is right. And if you don't like it and you don't cooperate, I do whatever I want, and then I will control it so there is nothing that can be good, is bad, and then I will just tell anything I want about you. I'll tell your friends whatever I want. Doesn't have to be true. If I decide you're bad, then it's true you are bad. So I'll tell anyone I want, your people, anyone else, that you are bad. That's okay. That's what I do. I think it's normal. Is what I do normal?
Yeah, it's female type antisocial behavior, feminine type antisocial behavior. Yeah, okay. Yeah, shaming and reputation savaging. Yeah, it's terrible.
I mean, people tend more to avoid interfering when they witness it. They don't acknowledge it as a violent behavior.
there's a malevolence aspect to it, which is just the delight that people can take in being destructive. And that's part of the whole constellation of, let's say, antisocial behavior. But there's a more subtle element to it, which is reputation inflation. So the most valuable thing you possess by any stretch of the imagination is your reputation. And your reputation basically, I wouldn't call it a status marker exactly. It's a productive generosity and competence marker. And so if you have a good reputation, then people can trust you, and they can trust you to engage in reciprocal productive interactions with them. They can trust you to take their interests into account as well as your own, and to play stable, voluntary, desirable, medium to long-term games. And so nothing is more valuable than your reputation. And what that means is that people try to game the reputation system. And that's what narcissists do, and Machiavellians and psychopaths, dark triad personality cluster. And it's a variant of antisocial behavior. And narcissists have the confidence of the competent without the competence. And so what they do is overclaim their contributions. Narcissists, it's a camouflage strategy in some sense. The narcissist passes him or herself off as a competent and confident person. And one way of elevating your reputation is to claim unearned moral virtue.
I am right. I did nothing wrong. My son is wrong. I was perfectly right. I did nothing wrong at all.
An attempt to claim a reputational status without having to do any of the work whatsoever to be a genuinely good person. To be a good person, you have to be productive. That's hard. And you have to be generous. And that's hard. And you have to play medium to long-term, stable, voluntary games with other people. And that's hard. That's nothing but diligent, upward-oriented work over years puts you in that position.
No, stable, long-term cooperation. No, anytime I want, any moment, I do anything at all that I feel like to make anything happen. No one can predict. I could do anything and mess up anything at any time. Anything can become destable, not stable. I make destable. Good, yeah, no problem. No remorse.
Whereas if you make a unwarranted moral claim, I'm compassionate, let's say, then instantly you're with the angels, and it also allows you to derogate those who you regard as predatory, let's say, and also enhance your moral virtue. Not only am I compassionate, and that makes me good, and I'm on the side of the angels, but there are the snakes, and they're not in me at all.
He is so bad. It's not me.
Because I'm saintly in all regards, and so the snakes have to be somewhere. We all suffer from the problem of where to put Satan, that's for sure. And the most convenient place to put him is in someone else, and it's even more convenient if that redounds to your benefit.
Say this is a more feminine...
It's a feminine style of antisocial behavior. So, well, there's two forms of antisocial behavior. There's a male form and a female form.
Right.
Or a masculine form, that's a better way of thinking about it, and a feminine form, because men can play the feminine ASP game, antisocial personality, and men can play, or females can play the male game. Male antisocial types they tend to be physically violent.
Right. And
that's evident at the age of 2 already. So there's a subset of 2-year-olds who are already criminals in the making, let's say.
I was the extreme opposite of violent when I was young, but one person that happens to come to mind, you remember those stories about Michael Cancer, where he's 3 or 4 years old kicking his mother in the elevator, which is crazy.
They bite, kick, hit, and steal if they're put among other 2-year-olds. Most of them are socialized out of it by the age of 4. Vast majority, but some aren't, and they tend to be outcasts from then on, because 4-year-olds don't like 4-year-old aggressive 2-year-olds. They won't play with them, and then they get isolated, and then they become bullies and juvenile delinquents, and it's a bad pathway. It's very stable too. It's very sad. It's very sad, actually. And but the male pattern is violent. And we don't like violent criminals, and those are the people who tend to be locked up. Female violent aggression doesn't work very well.
No.
First of all, girls tend not to fight physically with one another, and certainly girls can't fight. Girls can fight with boys because there's not much difference between girls and boys, say before puberty in terms of physical strength. But once puberty hits, women can't compete in the physical aggression domain, and they're not inclined to either, because they could use guns and knives, but they tend not to. But women have their own underground means of stealing, and they steal reputation. It's very many women and many other men as well who use this pattern of derogation and reputation enhancement. And you can't bring it to a physical, to the point of physical altercation. You can if you're a man, and that happens very rapidly with men, which is why it almost never happens. It happens almost immediately with men. It's like, what did you say? Do you want to say that again? And any man worth his salt knows how to play that game. And so generally among men, this just doesn't happen. Now on Twitter, online, that's a different story, because that pathway of reputation denigration beckons. I'm using men for a specific example, is that at some point you're either going to capitulate or you're going to stand up for yourself. And part of the way that happens is that each time you're assaulted in that way, insulted in that way, you're going to get a little more annoyed. And that accumulates. It doesn't go away. It'll gnaw at you, you know. You'll be inside thinking, what the hell's going on here? I've got something to say. I can't be yelled at. And you'll hit a threshold. It's, I'm going to hurt you if you keep doing this. And then the bullies will almost invariably back off if they're male. I think that women whose relationship with men has been seriously pathologized cannot distinguish between male authority and competence and male tyrannical power. Like, they fail to differentiate because all they see is the oppressive male. And they may have had experiences that their experiences with men might have been rough enough so that differentiation never occurred, because it has to occur. And you have to have a lot of experience with men, and good men too, before that will occur. But it seems to me that we're also increasingly dominated by a view of masculinity that's mostly characteristic of women who have terrible personality disorders and who are unable to have healthy relationships with men. Now, but here's the problem. You know, it's that there's no step forward that you can take under those circumstances, because if the man is offensive enough and crazy enough, the reaction becomes physical right away, or at least the threat is there. And when men are talking to each other in any serious manner, that underlying threat of physicality is always there, especially if it's a real conversation, and it keeps the thing civilized to some degree. You know, if you're talking to a man who wouldn't fight with you under any circumstances whatsoever, then you're talking to someone to whom you have absolutely no respect. But I can't see any way. It seems to me that it's sane women who have to stand up against their crazy sisters and say, look, enough of that, enough man-hating, enough pathology, enough bringing disgrace on us as a gender. But the problem there, and then I'll stop my little tirade, is that most of the women I know who are sane are busy doing sane things, right? They're off, they have their career, they have their family, they're quite occupied, and they don't seem to have the time or maybe even the interest to go after their crazy harpy sisters. And so I don't see any regulating force for that terrible femininity. And it seems to me to be invading the culture and undermining the masculine power of the culture in a way that's, I think, fatal. I really do believe.